We don't need you anymore. My son Ethan wrote that text after I had completed the payments on my daughter-in-law Sophia's new mansion, the same mansion he had convinced me to pay for, brick by brick, over the last 8 months. Every single dollar that left my bank account, every sacrifice I made, every loan I signed for, it was all for that house that they now considered solely theirs. I read the message while the confirmation of the last wire transfer was still open on my computer screen. $5,000, the final payment. The one that closed this chapter of unconditional help that I, Catherine Miller, had given to my only son, because I believed that was how you built a strong family. I stared at those words on the phone screen. I did not cry. I did not scream. I simply took a deep breath and felt something inside me click into place, like a puzzle piece finally finding its correct position after years of being forced into the wrong spot. We don't need you anymore. How easy it is to discard the person who gave you everything. How simple it turns out to be to slam the door shut once you have gotten what you wanted. How convenient it is to forget where the money came from that paid for every inch of that mansion with its manicured lawn, the swimming pool, and the 3-car garage. My fingers moved almost by instinct. I replied with barely 3 words. 3 words that at that moment did not hold the weight they were about to acquire very soon. No problem, son. I sent the message and left the phone on the table. Ethan had no idea what that calm, serene response meant, so completely devoid of the pleading or the drama he probably expected from me. He did not know that a plan was already taking shape in my mind, a response that included neither tears nor begging, but something much more effective. I got up from the sofa and walked to the kitchen. I brewed a cup of chamomile tea with the same calm with which I had read his message. I took the first sip, let the hot liquid comfort me, and then I picked up my phone again. This time I did not dial Ethan's number. I dialed another number, one I had saved under the name Jonathan Davis, my attorney and an old family friend. Jonathan answered on the second ring. "Catherine, how are you? It has been a while since I heard from you." "Jonathan, I need you to review some documents for me. It is urgent." There was a pause. Jonathan had known me for more than 20 years. He knew my voice. He knew my tones. And he definitely noticed that something had changed. "What kind of documents?" "The ones for the mortgage loan I signed for my son's house. I need to know exactly what rights I have regarding that property." I heard Jonathan take a breath on the other end of the line. He had been one of the few who warned me to be careful when Ethan came to me with that proposal 8 months ago. One of the few who told me to get everything in writing, to protect my interests, not to trust blindly just because he was my son. "Catherine, give me an hour. I am going to review everything, and I will call you back." "Thanks, Jonathan." I hung up and sat down again. The house was silent. My small house, the one I had shared with my late husband for 30 years, the one that had seen Ethan grow up, the one that was never good enough for Sophia, but was always enough for me. The walls were full of memories, of photographs from happier times, of moments when my son still looked at me with love, and not with the calculating coldness he had learned from his wife, Sophia. Just thinking about her made my jaw tense up. From the day Ethan brought her home, I knew there was something about her I did not like. It was not her appearance, which was undoubtedly beautiful. It was not her way of speaking, which was polite when it was convenient. It was something deeper, something that hid behind her perfect smiles and her measured hugs. It was pure ambition. Ambition without limits, without scruples, without the slightest trace of gratitude or humility. But I had stayed silent. I had smiled. I had accepted it because Ethan seemed happy, because my son had chosen this woman, and I, like a good mother, thought my job was to support him unconditionally. How wrong I was. How blind I was not to see that unconditional support without clear boundaries is not love, it is complicity in your own destruction. The phone rang exactly 52 minutes later. Jonathan was always punctual. "Catherine, I have news." "Are you sitting down?" "I am sitting down. The loan is completely in your name. You are the legal holder of the mortgage. Ethan and Sophia appear as beneficiaries of the residence, but technically, until the total payment is completed and the official transfer of the property is made, you have significant rights over that house. You have paid 60% of the total value so far." "Correct. I just made the transfer for the last payment of that phase." "Wait, you said you just made a payment. An hour ago. $5,000. Jonathan fell silent for a moment. I heard the sound of papers shuffling. Catherine, according to my calculations and what I see in the documents I have here, 40% of the total property value is still missing. Those $5,000 you just paid covered the last agreed-upon installment of the first phase, but there are approximately $120,000 pending that needed to be paid over the next 6 months. I felt a small, almost imperceptible smile begin to form on my lips. And what happens if I cancel my commitment to pay that remaining 40%? There was a long silence. Jonathan understood immediately where my question was going. If you cancel the pending payments, the bank will foreclose on the mortgage. Ethan and Sophia would have to secure financing on their own to cover that debt, or they would lose the property. Considering the house is valued at $300,000 and you have already paid $180,000, they would have to come up with $120,000 in a very short time or face eviction. And Catherine, knowing them as I do, I doubt very much they have that capital available or the necessary credit score to get a loan of that magnitude. How much time would they have? The bank generally gives a grace period of 48 hours to regularize overdue payments in cases of high-value mortgages. After that, they initiate the foreclosure process, which can take between 15 and 30 days depending on the state. But the eviction notice can arrive much sooner, 48 hours, 2 days. In 2 days, my son and my daughter-in-law, who had just told me they no longer needed me, would be facing the real possibility of losing their dream mansion, their status symbol, their little palace, built with the sweat and tears of a mother they discarded as if she were nothing. Jonathan, can you do something for me? Whatever you need. Catherine, I want you to call the bank tomorrow first thing in the morning and formally cancel my commitment to the pending payments on that mortgage. I want you to make it official, in writing, with all the necessary legal formalities. Catherine, are you completely sure about this? They are going to suffer. They are going to face the consequences of their actions. They are going to learn that people are not disposable. They are going to understand that respect and gratitude are not optional in family relationships. My voice sounded firm, firmer than it had sounded in years. There was no doubt in my words. There was no hesitation. For the first time in a long time, I felt I was making a decision from a place of self-strength and not from the fear of losing my son's love. I will do it tomorrow at 9 in the morning. I will keep you informed of every step. Thanks, Jonathan. I owe you one. You do not owe me anything, Catherine. It just makes me happy to see that you are finally setting boundaries. Your husband would be proud of you. Those last words hit me harder than I expected. My husband. My dear husband who passed away 5 years ago and who always told me that Ethan needed to learn the value of $1, the value of effort, the value of things that are not given but earned. How right he was. How I missed him in that moment. I hung up the phone and stared at the screen. There were no more messages from Ethan. He was probably celebrating with Sophia, toasting in their new mansion, laughing about how easy it had been to manipulate his foolish old mother to get the house of their dreams without spending a dime of their own money. But the laughter was not going to last long. In less than 24 hours, that celebration would turn into panic. And I, from my small and humble home, was going to watch as the house of cards they had built on my back collapsed. That night, I could not sleep. But not from anguish or regret. I did not sleep because my mind was completely awake, processing every detail of the last 8 months, seeing with brutal clarity everything I had ignored, all the red flags I had decided not to see because I wanted to believe my son was still the loving boy he once was. I got up at 5 in the morning, made coffee, and sat in front of my kitchen window. From there, I could see the small garden my husband had planted years ago. The rose bushes he cared for with such dedication were now neglected, full of weeds, because I had been too busy working overtime, pulling double shifts, selling my things to gather money for a house that would never be mine. The phone vibrated on the table. It was a message from Jonathan. Good morning, Catherine. At 9 o'clock sharp, I will make the call to the bank. Do you confirm you want to proceed? My fingers typed the response without hesitation. I confirm. Proceed. I sent the message and took a sip of coffee. It was 6:30 in the morning. In 2.5 hours, everything would change. In 2.5 hours, Ethan and Sophia would receive the notice from the bank, informing them that the payments had been canceled and that they had 48 hours to regularize the debt of $120,000 or face foreclosure. While I waited, my mind traveled 8 months back, to the day it all began. To the day Ethan appeared at my door with that smile I had not seen in months, that smile that made me think my son was finally seeking me out because he missed me, because he wanted to spend time with me, because he valued our relationship. How naive I was. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was making dinner when I heard the doorbell. I opened the door, and there was Ethan. Alone, without Sophia. That was already strange because it had been more than a year since he had come to visit me without her. Sophia always accompanied him, always controlled every conversation, always ensured the visits were short and superficial. "Mom, can I come in? I need to talk to you." I let him in. I made tea for both of us. We sat in the same living room where I was now planning my response to his betrayal. Ethan seemed nervous, uncomfortable, as if he were mentally rehearsing what he was going to say. "Mom, Sophia and I found a house. The perfect house to start our family." I smiled. Of course I smiled. My son was going to have his own house. That was a reason for joy, wasn't it? "That is wonderful. Son, where is it located?" "In Highland Park. It is a beautiful area, quiet, with great schools. It has 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a big backyard, a swimming pool. It is exactly what we always wanted." Highland Park, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. My stomach tightened a little, but I kept the smile. "It sounds incredible. Ethan, I am so happy for you guys." He took his cup of tea but did not drink. He just held it between his hands, looking at the liquid as if the words he needed to say were written there. "The price is $300,000. I nodded. It was a huge amount, but Ethan had a good job as a sales manager. Sophia worked in marketing. Together, they earned well. Could they get a mortgage? You two must be excited about the buying process. Ethan finally looked me straight in the eyes. "That is the problem. Mom, our credit score isn't good enough to get a mortgage for that amount. We had some financial issues last year, some credit card debt that affected our score. The banks are denying us the loan." I started to understand where the conversation was going. I felt my heart speed up, like a small voice inside me was warning me to be careful, to set boundaries, not to let myself be manipulated. "I understand. It is hard when your credit is damaged, but you can work on improving it. You can wait a year or two. You can look for a more modest house in the meantime. We can't wait. Mom, this house isn't going to be available for long. There are already other people interested. It is a unique opportunity." The warning voice in my head got louder, but then Ethan did something that shattered all my defenses. He leaned forward, took my hands in his, and looked at me with those eyes I had known since he was born. Those eyes that reminded me of the baby I held for the first time, the boy who ran to my arms when he fell, the teenager who cried on my shoulder when his heart was broken. "Mom, you could help us. Your credit is excellent. You have never had debt. The banks would approve the loan for you without a problem. We would pay everything. Absolutely everything. We just need you to put your name on the documents, for you to be the one to handle the mortgage. It would be temporary, just until our credit improves and we can transfer it to our name." My mouth went dry. All the alarms in my head were ringing at the same time. "Ethan, that is a huge responsibility. If you guys can't pay, I would be left with that debt." "It won't happen, Mom. I promise you. We have stable incomes. We can cover the monthly payments without a problem. We just need your help to get the initial approval. Please, Mom. It is the house where we want to raise our children. Your future grandchildren. It is our dream. Your future grandchildren." Those words were the final blow. Ethan knew exactly what buttons to push. He knew my greatest wish was to have grandchildren. He knew the idea of a growing family, of children's laughter filling a home, was my biggest weakness. "Give me a few days to think about it." Ethan smiled. That smile that I interpreted as gratitude, but now, with the perspective of time, I understand was triumph. "Thanks, Mom. I knew I could count on you. You have always been the best mom in the world." He left that afternoon after staying barely an hour. He didn't even finish his tea. When I closed the door behind him, I stood in the foyer, feeling a strange weight in my chest. Something was not right. Something about that whole conversation sounded rehearsed, calculated, too perfect in its apparent spontaneity. But then I thought about my future grandchildren. I thought about a happy Ethan. I thought about being the grandmother who helped build the family home. And all those alarms ringing in my head were silenced under the weight of my desire to be needed, to be important, to be loved by my son. 3 days later I called him and told him yes, that I would help him, that we would go to the bank together to process the mortgage. Ethan arrived at my house with Sophia. She looked radiant, in an expensive dress and a perfume that probably cost more than my monthly utility bills. She hugged me with an effusiveness that surprised me. "Catherine, you don't know what this means to us. You are an angel, a true blessing." I should have noticed she called me Catherine, not Mom. I should have noticed her hug was mechanical, that her eyes were not smiling even though her mouth was. I should have noticed many things. At the bank, I signed papers. So many papers. The loan officer explained the terms, the conditions, the liabilities. I nodded. I signed. I trusted. Ethan was by my side, smiling, assuring the officer that they would handle all the monthly payments. "My mother is only helping us with the initial paperwork. We will cover all the costs." The officer looked at me with an expression I did not know how to interpret at that moment. Now I know it was pity. He had seen this situation before. He had seen trusting parents being used by unscrupulous children. The mortgage was approved in a week. $200,000 lent by the bank, $100,000 that had to be given as a down payment. The plan was that Ethan and Sophia would pay $50,000 of the down payment with their savings, and that I would cover the other $50,000 temporarily until they sold some investments they had. $50,000. I did not have $50,000 in cash. I had savings, yes, but they were barely $25,000 that I had gathered over years working as a secretary at a school. The rest I would have to get from somewhere else. "Don't worry, Mom. In 2 months we will pay you back those $50,000. We have investments that are about to mature. It is a matter of time." I took the $25,000 from my savings, took out a personal loan for another $15,000, and sold the jewelry my husband had given me during our marriage, except for my wedding band. That gave me the last $10,000. I handed over the check for $50,000 with trembling hands. It was everything I had. It was my security, my financial cushion, my safety net, and I was handing it over because I trusted my son. Ethan and Sophia moved into the house 2 weeks later. I still hadn't seen it. They hadn't invited me to see it. "When it is completely settled, we will invite you, Mom. We want you to see it perfect." A month passed, then 2. The $50,000 were never returned. When I asked, Ethan always had an excuse. The investments took longer to mature. There was a problem with the paperwork. Next week without fail. And then the other requests started. The phone rang exactly at 9:15 in the morning. It was Jonathan. "It is done, Catherine. I spoke with the bank. The cancellation of your commitment to the pending payments has been officially processed. The bank will send the notification to Ethan and Sophia in the next 2 hours. They will inform them that they have 48 hours to cover the remaining $120,000, or the foreclosure process will begin." I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. There was no turning back. The gears were in motion. "Thanks, Jonathan." "Catherine, brace yourself. When they receive that notification, they are going to call you. They are going to be desperate. They are going to say things. They are going to promise things. They are going to try to manipulate you again. Are you ready for that?" "I am ready." I hung up and made myself a full breakfast for the first time in months. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit, orange juice. I ate slowly, savoring every bite, feeling my body recover something it had lost during those 8 months of constant sacrifice. Dignity. I was recovering my dignity. While I ate, my mind went back 3 months after Ethan and Sophia moved into the mansion. It was when they appeared with the first additional request. It was a Sunday. They called to finally invite me to see the house. I was excited. After 3 months, I was finally going to see the place I had helped secure. I dressed in my best clothes, bought a plant as a housewarming gift, and drove the 40 minutes to Highland Park with a heart full of hope. The house was impressive, much bigger than I had imagined. 2 stories, modern facade, Large yard with perfectly cut grass, driveway for 3 cars. I stood in front of it, feeling a mix of pride and bewilderment. Pride, because I had helped make this possible. Bewilderment, because this house represented a lifestyle completely different from mine, from the one Ethan had known growing up, from the one my husband and I had built with effort and humility. Sophia opened the door. She was wearing expensive sportswear, her hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail, flawless makeup even for being at home on a Sunday afternoon. "Catherine, so good you arrived. Come in. But take off your shoes, please. We just put in new floors and we want to keep them spotless." I took off my shoes. I left the plant in the entryway because Sophia made no move to receive it. I walked into the house barefoot, feeling strangely vulnerable, like a second-class guest in a place I had helped pay for. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. High ceilings, huge windows, modern furniture that looked extremely expensive, minimalist decor, but clearly costly. Everything in neutral tones, grays, whites, beige, cold, beautiful, but cold. "What do you think?" Ethan appeared from the kitchen with a glass of red wine in his hand. It was 3 in the afternoon. "It is beautiful, son. Really beautiful. Isn't it? Sophia has excellent taste in decor." Sophia smiled smugly and guided me on a quick tour. She showed me the living room, the dining room, the kitchen with stainless steel appliances that probably cost more than my car, the secondary family room, the guest bathroom with marble finishes. Everything was perfect. Everything was expensive. Everything screamed money they hadn't earned. When we went up to the second floor, I noticed one of the bedrooms was completely empty. And this room? Sophia and Ethan exchanged a look. That was when I knew the real reason for the invitation was about to be revealed. "That is the topic we wanted to discuss with you, Mom." Ethan set his wine glass on a hallway dresser. "This room is destined to be the nursery for our future baby." My heart skipped a beat. "A baby? Are you going to give me a grandchild? Are you pregnant?" "Not yet," Sophia replied with a rehearsed smile. "But we are planning to start trying soon. And when that moment comes, we want everything to be perfect. That is why we need to finish setting up this room." "Sure, I understand. And what do you need to do?" Ethan cleared his throat. That sound he made when he was uncomfortable, when he was about to ask for something he knew he shouldn't ask for. "The thing is, we came up a little short with the moving budget and the initial decorating. We spent more than planned on the living and dining room furniture. And now for the baby's room, we need approximately $15,000. For the furniture, the decor, special non-toxic paint, everything necessary for it to be ready. $15,000. I felt my stomach tighten. "Ethan, I already lent you $50,000 for the down payment. You still haven't paid me back." "I know, Mom. I know. And we are going to pay you back. I promise. But this is for your grandchild. Don't you want your grandchild to have the best room possible?" There it was again. The emotional manipulation. The use of a baby that didn't even exist yet as a tool to extract more money from me. "Son, I don't have $15,000 available right now." Sophia intervened, her voice sweet, but with a barely perceptible edge. "Catherine, we understand it is a lot of money, but we thought maybe you could get another small loan. Your credit score is excellent. The banks would approve it without a problem, and we would pay the interest. Of course. Another loan. They wanted me to go further into debt. They wanted me to put my financial stability at risk for a room for a baby who wasn't even on the way. I should have said no. I should have stood up, put on my shoes, walked out of that house and never returned. But then Ethan put his hand on my shoulder. "Mom, I know it is a lot to ask, but you have always been there for me. Always. And I want that when my child arrives, when your grandchild arrives, they know their grandmother was an important part of building their home, that she did it with love. With love." Those words should have comforted me. Instead, they burned me. Because deep down, somewhere deep in my being, I knew this wasn't love. This was usage, exploitation, manipulation disguised as family ties. But I accepted. I said yes. I took out another personal loan for $15,000. I signed more papers. I accepted more interest. I sank deeper into debt, and I handed the money to Ethan 2 weeks later. I never saw that finished baby room. They never invited me back to the house. And the pregnancy they spoke of never happened, or at least they never informed me of it. Month 4 brought another request. This time, it was over the phone. Mom, the yard needs work. It is neglected, and we want to put in an automatic sprinkler system and professional landscaping. It is $12,000. Month 5, the pool needed repairs and a heating system. $20,000. Month 6, they wanted to remodel the kitchen because the cabinets that came with the house weren't the quality Sophia desired. $25,000. Every time they asked, I looked for a way to get the money. I sold my car and bought an older one. I sold antique furniture that had sentimental value. I sold my husband's vinyl record collection. I worked extra shifts. I cut my expenses to the minimum. I stopped going out with my friends because I couldn't afford even a coffee. I stopped buying new clothes. I stopped going to the dentist because I couldn't pay the copay. I consumed myself. I emptied myself. I became an exhausted version of myself, all to keep my son's dream afloat. A dream he didn't appreciate, didn't value, took for granted as if it were his right and not my sacrifice. And during all that time, the visits became increasingly scarce. The calls only came when they needed something. The I love yous disappeared. The thank yous became mechanical and empty. Sophia stopped hiding her disdain. On the only other visit I made to the house, in month 7, she met me at the door and didn't even let me in. Catherine, Ethan isn't here. Did you need something? I just came to visit you guys. I haven't seen you in weeks. Oh, well, we are very busy. Maybe another day. We will call you. And she closed the door. Literally closed the door in my face. I stood there, on the porch of a house I had largely paid for, feeling like an unwelcome stranger. That night I cried for the first time in months. I cried because I was finally starting to see the truth I had denied for so long. My son didn't love me, or if he loved me, that love was so buried under layers of selfishness and manipulation that it didn't matter. Sophia hated me, or at best, saw me as a useful resource and nothing more. But even so, when month 8 arrived, and Ethan called to tell me they needed the last $5,000 to complete some final payments, I got the money. I sold the last thing of value I had left, my wedding band, the only piece of jewelry I had promised never to sell. The wedding band rested in my hand the last night before selling it. It was a simple white gold band, without diamonds or elaborate adornments. My husband hadn't been a wealthy man, but he had given it to me with all the love in the world on our wedding day, 45 years ago. Inside were engraved our initials and the date, C&J, June 15, 1980. I took it off my finger for the first time since the day he put it on me. The space it left on my skin was paler than the rest, a permanent mark of decades of continuous use. I looked at that circle of white skin and felt I was betraying something sacred. But Ethan needed that money. Ethan had told me it was the last time that with those $5,000 all pending payments for home improvements would be completed. I promise you, Mom, this is the last time I ask for help. After this, everything will be finished, and we can start paying you back for everything you have done for us. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. Because if I didn't believe him, then I would have to face the reality that I had destroyed my financial stability, sold all my memories, indebted myself up to my neck for a son who only saw me as a personal bank. I sold the ring at a pawn shop for $4,000. It was worth more, much more in sentimental value, but the appraiser only saw the weight of the gold. The other $1,000 I took from the money I had set aside to pay my utilities that month. I would figure out how to manage later. I wired the $5,000 to Ethan on a Tuesday morning. He replied with a simple message, received, thanks. Not even thanks, Mom. Just thanks. As if I had lent him $10 for lunch, and not $5,000 that represented the last piece of my previous life, the last vestige of my marriage turned into cash for his convenience. And 30 minutes after that transfer, the message arrived that changed everything. We don't need you anymore. While I remembered all this sitting in my kitchen, the phone began to vibrate. I looked at the screen. It was Ethan. The notification from the bank had already arrived. It had been exactly 2 hours since Jonathan made the call. I let the phone vibrate. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 consecutive calls that I did not answer. Then the messages started. Mom, call me urgent. Mom, there is a problem with the bank. I need to talk to you now. Please pick up the phone. Mom, I turned off the phone. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet. I wasn't ready to listen to his pleas, his empty promises, his panic barely disguised as filial concern. I needed this moment of silence, this moment where the power had finally changed hands. I poured myself another cup of coffee and went out to the backyard. My husband's rose bushes looked at me with reproach. I had neglected them terribly. For 8 months, my life had revolved completely around getting money for Ethan. And my own house, my own space, had fallen into abandonment. I knelt in front of the roses and started pulling weeds with my hands. The earth was dry, the roots thirsty. I had been so busy feeding Sophia's garden with money that didn't belong to me, that I had let the garden my husband planted with his own hands die. Forgive me, I whispered, not knowing if I was speaking to my dead husband or to myself. Forgive me for forgetting what really matters. I worked in the garden for 3 hours. I pulled weeds, watered the plants, pruned the dead branches. My hands got dirty, my knees hurt, my back protested. But I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. A strange peace that came from doing something for myself, for my own space, without expecting anything in return. When I went back inside the house, I turned on the phone. There were 37 missed calls from Ethan, 20 from Sophia, 15 text messages, each time more desperate. Ethan's last message said, "Mom, please, the bank says you canceled the payments. It says we have 48 hours to get $120,000 or we will lose the house. This has to be a mistake. Call me, please." It was not a mistake. It was justice. Sophia had also left messages. I read them one by one, observing the evolution of the tone. The first ones tried to be sweet, almost kind. "Catherine, honey, there is a confusion with the bank. You can call us." Then they became more urgent. "Catherine, this is serious. We need to speak with you immediately." And finally, they showed her true face. "This is ridiculous. After everything we have done for you, this is how you repay us? Fix this now." Everything they had done for me. I read that phrase 3 times. What exactly had they done for me? Allow me to empty my bank account for them? Give me the privilege of going into debt to finance their lifestyle? Bless me with the opportunity to sell the last possessions that connected me to my dead husband? I replied only to Ethan, a simple message. "It is not a mistake, son. I have decided I cannot continue with the payments. I am sorry." The response came in seconds. "What? Mom, you can't do this. You promised us you would help. We are going to lose the house. You told me you didn't need me anymore. I am respecting that." My phone started ringing immediately. It was Ethan. This time I answered. "How can you do this to us?" His voice was a scream that could probably be heard all over Highland Park. "You are my mother. You are supposed to help me." "I helped you, Ethan. For 8 months I helped you. I spent every dollar I had. I went into debt. I sold everything I owned, including the wedding band your father gave me. And your response was to tell me you didn't need me anymore. That wasn't literal. It was just an expression." "An expression? After I had just transferred $5,000 to you, your expression was to tell me you didn't need me anymore? That is your version." I heard Sophia screaming in the background. "Give me the phone. Let me talk to her. Ethan, you and Sophia are adults with good jobs. You can solve this on your own. You can get a loan. You can ask Sophia's family for help. You can sell some of the expensive things you bought with my money. We don't have time for that. The bank gives us 48 hours, and Sophia's family doesn't have that kind of money. How convenient that Sophia's family never had to contribute a dime to that mansion. How convenient that all the requests always came directed at me, the widowed mother with a credit history and a heart too soft. Then maybe you need to consider selling the house and looking for something more modest, something you can pay for yourselves. You don't understand. This house is everything to us. It is our future. It is where we were going to raise our children. Ethan, you have been in that house for 8 months and there is no pregnancy. You asked me for $15,000 for a nursery that never materialized. You asked me for money for a garden you never let me enjoy. You asked me for money for a pool you never invited me to swim in. That house was never about family. It was about status. About impressing people who probably don't even care about you. Sophia snatched the phone from him. "Catherine, listen to me well. If you don't fix this, you are going to regret it. I am going to make sure you never meet your grandchildren. I am going to make Ethan cut all contact with you. You are going to die alone and forgotten." Her voice was pure poison. There were no longer pretenses of sweetness, of respect, of pretending I mattered to her. This was the true Sophia, the one who had always been there, but who had hidden behind fake smiles and empty hugs. "Sophia," I replied with a calm that surprised myself. "If the only way to have a relationship with my son and my future grandchildren is by emptying my bank account and destroying my life, then I prefer to die alone. At least I will die with dignity." And I hung up. The silence after hanging up the phone was absolute. My hand still held the device, trembling slightly, not from fear but from the adrenaline that comes after finally speaking a truth you have kept for too long. I had hung up. I had hung up the phone on my daughter-in-law, and by extension, on my son. Something that never, in 69 years of life, had I imagined I would do. The phone rang again almost immediately. It was Ethan again. I did not answer. It rang again, and again, and again. I let it ring until it finally stopped. Then came the messages, an avalanche of desperate words that contradicted each other in their rush to find the right button to push to make me change my mind. "Mom, please, Sophia didn't mean that. She is very stressed. We need to talk about this as adults. I can't believe you are doing this to us after everything. If Dad were alive, he would be very disappointed in you." That last sentence hit me like a fist to the stomach. If Dad were alive. Ethan dared to invoke the memory of his father, the man who worked every day of his life to give us a decent life, the man who taught me that true love is not bought or sold, the man who warned me on his deathbed not to let anyone, not even our son, turn me into a shadow of myself. "Guard your light, Catherine," my husband had told me with his last breath. "Don't let anyone put it out, not even for love." And I had let it go out. For 8 months, I had let Ethan and Sophia blow on that flame until it was almost extinguished. But now, sitting in my kitchen with the phone full of manipulative messages, I felt that light starting to kindle again. I replied only to the last message, the one mentioning his father. "Your father would be proud that I am finally standing up for myself. He would be disappointed that you have forgotten the values he taught you." There was no response after that, at least not for a while. I spent the rest of the day in a strange calm. I cleaned my house, something I had neglected for months. I dusted the furniture. I vacuumed the carpets. I washed the windows. Every action was an act of recovery, of reclaiming my space, my life, my identity that had been buried under the weight of constant demands. While I cleaned, I found things I had forgotten I had. A photograph of Ethan when he was 5 years old, smiling with a missing tooth, hugging a stuffed dog I had sewn by hand. A drawing he made for me in elementary school. A portrait of the 3 of us, him, his father, and me, with the words, "My family is the best," written in colored crayons. A letter he wrote me when he was 16, after a fight we had, where he apologized and told me I was the best mom in the world and he never wanted to disappoint me. I held that letter in my hands and felt the tears finally come. Not tears of sadness, but of grief. Grief for the boy who wrote those words and who somewhere along the way had become the man who wrote me now, "We don't need you anymore." Grief for the mother-son relationship I had imagined having, and that reality had shattered. Grief for the years I spent denying the signs, ignoring the red flags, convincing myself that if I just gave a little more, if I just helped a little more, everything would go back to how it was before. But there is no going back. There is only moving forward. I put the letter, the photograph, and the drawing in a box. I didn't throw them away. They were part of my history, part of who I was, and who Ethan had been. But I stored them. I closed them up. I put them on a high shelf in the closet, memories I could visit whenever I wanted, but that would no longer define my present. The phone vibrated with a new message. This time, it wasn't from Ethan or Sophia. It was from Jonathan. "Catherine, just wanted to inform you that the bank confirmed Ethan and Sophia tried to apply for an emergency loan this afternoon. It was denied due to their credit history. They also tried to use the house as collateral, but since the property is in dispute due to the pending payments, they couldn't proceed. They are looking for options, but from what my contact at the bank told me, they don't have many viable alternatives in the time they have left. Less than 40 hours now, the clock was ticking, and they didn't have solutions. I wondered what they would be doing at that moment. Would Ethan and Sophia be sitting in their expensive living room, surrounded by furniture I paid for, staring at walls I financed, feeling their perfect world crumble? Would they be blaming me? Or would they finally be seeing themselves, seeing the decisions they made, the greed they fed, the bridge they burned? Night fell over my small house. I made a simple dinner, something I hadn't done in weeks. During the last few months, I had eaten mostly leftovers, cheap food, the bare minimum to survive, because every dollar saved was a dollar I could send to Ethan. But that night, I prepared a dish I enjoyed, that I savored, that I ate without haste and without guilt. After dinner, I sat on the back porch. The night air was cool. The stars shone timidly through the city's light pollution. I heard the sounds of the neighborhood, dogs barking in the distance, children playing at a nearby house, the constant hum of traffic on the main avenue. This was my world, this working-class neighborhood where people knew each other by name, where neighbors greeted you on the street, where you didn't need a mansion to have dignity. I had spent so much time envying the world of Highland Park, thinking that if Ethan lived there he would be happier, more successful, more complete. But Highland Park hadn't made him a better person. It had only made him greedier, more distant, more willing to sacrifice real relationships for material possessions. My phone vibrated again. Another message from Ethan. "Mom, I came to your house. I am outside. Please, open the door. We need to talk face to face." I froze. I looked toward the front of the house from where I was sitting on the back porch. I saw the lights of a car parked on the street. Ethan had come. After 8 months of scarce visits, of short messages, of calls only when he needed money. Now he was at my door because he needed me again. I didn't move. I let him ring the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. I heard his voice calling me from outside. "Mom, I know you are there. Your car is in the garage. Please open up." I closed my eyes. This was the test. This was the moment where my resolve would be put to the test. It would be so easy to open that door. Let Ethan in. Listen to his renewed promises, his elaborate justifications, his calculated tears. It would be so easy to give in, to go back to that familiar pattern of giving and giving until having nothing left to give. But I didn't move. "Mom, this isn't fair. I am going to lose my house. Sophia is devastated. Everything we have worked for is going to be lost. Everything we have worked for." The irony of those words was almost comical. They hadn't worked for that house. I had worked for that house. I had done the double shifts. I had sold my possessions. I had signed the loans. They had only lived in it, enjoyed it, and finally discarded me when they thought they had already extracted everything they could from me. The doorbell kept ringing. The knocking on the door became louder, more desperate. I heard Ethan shouting, his voice cracking with what could have been genuine anguish or could have been just panic over losing his status, his symbol of success, his material proof that he had made it. After 20 minutes, the sounds ceased. I heard his car engine start. I saw the taillights move away down the street. Ethan had left. He hadn't broken down the door. He hadn't called the police. He hadn't made a bigger scene. He had simply given up and left, probably back to Highland Park, to look for another solution, another bank to contact, another person to manipulate. I stayed sitting on the porch until the chill of the night became uncomfortable. Then I went inside, locked all the doors, turned off the lights, and went to bed. I slept better that night than I had slept in 8 months. There were no nightmares about unpayable debts. There were no anxious dreams about bank calls. Just deep, restful sleep. The kind of sleep that comes when you finally stop carrying a weight that was never yours to begin with. I woke up with the sun coming through my bedroom window. It was 7 in the morning. Outside, birds were singing in the neighborhood trees. It was a normal day for the rest of the world, but for Ethan and Sophia, it was the beginning of their last full day before the bank's deadline expired. 24 hours. That was all they had left to get $120,000. I got up, made coffee, and checked my phone. There were more messages, but this time not just from Ethan. There were messages from numbers I didn't recognize. I opened the first one. "Mrs. Miller, I am Patricia Navarro. Sophia's mother. I need to speak with you urgently about my daughter and your son's situation. Please, call me. So now Sophia's family was getting involved. The same family that never contributed $1 to that mansion, that never offered help, that probably didn't even know the true source of the money financing their daughter's lifestyle. I deleted the message without replying. There was another message from an unknown number. Catherine, it is William, your late husband's brother. Ethan called me last night crying, saying you are taking his house away. What is going on? Call me, William. It had been 3 years since I spoke with him. Since my husband's funeral, our contact had been minimal. Maybe a call at Christmas or a birthday message. And now Ethan had contacted him, probably painting a story where I was the villain, the cruel mother abandoning her son in his time of need. This time I did reply, but with a text message. William, the situation is complex. Ethan has given you only one version of the facts. If you really want to know the truth, we can talk. But I am not going to justify my decisions based on my son's manipulated account. The answer came in minutes. Come to my house this afternoon. I want to hear your version. I accepted. William was a fair man. He had been like a brother to me during my marriage to my husband. If anyone deserved to know the whole truth, it was him. I spent the morning getting ready. I gathered all the documents I had, the bank statements showing the transfers to Ethan, the receipts for the loans I had taken out, the confirmations of sale of my possessions, copies of the messages where Ethan asked me for money, again and again. I organized everything in a folder, creating a clear timeline of 8 months of financial sacrifice, followed by a 5-word message that changed everything. At 3 in the afternoon, I drove to William's house. He lived in a neighborhood similar to mine, modest but well-kept houses, small yards but full of life. His wife Susan opened the door. She hugged me with genuine warmth. Catherine, come in. William is in the living room. William was sitting in his favorite armchair, the same one where my husband used to sit when we visited. He saw me enter, and his expression was hard to read. There was no judgment yet, just curiosity mixed with concern. Sit down. Catherine, tell me what has really happened. I sat down and opened the folder. Over the next hour, I told him everything. I omitted nothing. I showed him the numbers, the dates, the messages. I explained how it started with the promise of temporary help and turned into a spiral of ever-increasing demands. I showed him Ethan's final message, the one saying they didn't need me anymore, sent exactly 30 minutes after my last transfer. William listened in silence, his eyes moving between the documents and my face. Susan, who had sat with us, had tears in her eyes. Catherine, you sold your wedding band, Susan whispered, the ring my brother gave you. I had nothing else to sell. William closed the folder and leaned back in his chair. He ran his hand over his face, a gesture that reminded me so much of my husband that I felt a pang in my chest. Ethan called me last night saying you had promised to pay for his house and now you were backing out because of a misunderstanding. He told me you were being irrational, that you were punishing him for a message that didn't have the intentions you attributed to it. And now what do you think? Now I think my nephew has turned into someone I don't recognize. I think that woman he married has turned him into a selfish version of himself. And I think my brother, may he rest in peace, would be furious to see how his son has treated his mother. Susan took my hand in hers. Catherine, you have done the right thing. I know it hurts. I know he is your son. But you have done the right thing. Those words, coming from my husband's family, meant more than they could imagine. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't exaggerating. I was, for the first time in a long time, protecting myself. Ethan asked me to convince you to change your mind, William said. He asked me to tell you that family should support each other, that is what my brother would do. And what are you going to tell him? I am going to tell him that family does need to support each other, but support is not a one-way street. I am going to tell him his father would never have approved of the way he has treated you. And I am going to tell him that if he really wants to be a man, he needs to solve his own problems instead of bleeding his mother dry financially. I stayed at William and Susan's house until nightfall. We drank coffee, shared memories of happier times, cried together for the man we had lost and for the son who seemed lost in a different way. When I finally said goodbye, Susan hugged me tight. Stay strong. Catherine, what you are doing, requires more strength than continuing to give. We are with you. I drove back home, feeling something I hadn't felt since this all began. Validation. I wasn't alone in this. I wasn't wrong. I was right to set boundaries. To say enough was enough. To refuse to continue being used. When I got home, there was a car parked in front of my driveway. It wasn't Ethan's. It was newer, more expensive. As I got closer, I saw Sophia sitting behind the wheel, looking at her phone. Upon seeing me arrive, she got out of the car. She was dressed differently than I had ever seen her. No designer clothes this time. She was wearing simple jeans and a regular blouse. Her makeup was minimal. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked tired, haggard, as if she hadn't slept. "Catherine, I need to talk to you." Her voice was different too. There was no arrogance. There wasn't that condescending tone she always used with me. There was something else. Desperation? Genuine fear? "We have nothing to talk about, Sophia. Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I opened the door to my house and let her in. I didn't invite her to sit. We stood in the living room, two women who had never liked each other, now facing off on the battlefield that money and family had created. "Where is Ethan?" I asked. "He is making calls, trying to get loans from anyone he knows. His friends, co-workers, former bosses. Nobody has that amount of money available." "And your family?" Sophia lowered her gaze. "My parents don't have that kind of capital. They live comfortably, but they don't have significant savings. We ask them for help, but they can only offer $15,000, and that is emptying their emergency fund. $15,000, a fraction of what they needed, a fraction of what I had given. Catherine, I know I have treated you poorly. I know I have been horrible to you. I know I haven't given you the respect you deserve as my husband's mother and as the person who helped us get this house." "Helped us?" "Sophia, I didn't help. I paid. I paid 60% of that house. I sold everything I had. I went into debt to the point of not being able to pay my own bills some months. I didn't help. I financed your dream while you treated me like a nuisance." Tears began to run down her face. They could have been real. They could have been acting. I didn't care to distinguish anymore. "I know. And I am sorry. I truly am sorry. But, please, we can't lose this house. It is everything we have." "No. Sophia, that house is not everything you have. You have youth. You have health. You have jobs. You have each other, apparently. You have everything I had at your age, and we built it from scratch, without anyone's help. The difference is that you want everything now, without effort, without self-sacrifice, only with the sacrifice of others." Sophia let herself fall onto my sofa without asking for permission. Her shoulders shook with sobs that seemed to come from the deepest part of her being. Part of me wanted to feel pity. Part of me wanted to give in, solve her problem, go back to being the savior I had always been. But a stronger part, a part that had awakened just 2 days ago, stood firm like a rock. "Catherine, I am going to tell you the truth. The whole truth." Sophia looked up, her face stained with runny mascara. "I convinced Ethan to ask you for the money. I was the one who planned every request, who calculated exactly how much you could give us before you refused. I was the one who told him to use the future grandchildren as emotional bait." Hearing the confirmation of what I had suspected for months should have devastated me. But instead, I felt a strange sense of relief. I hadn't been paranoid. I hadn't been imagining things. It had all been exactly as manipulative as it seemed to me. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I have nothing left to lose. Because in less than 24 hours, we are going to be on the street. Because I thought maybe, if I was honest with you for the first time, you might find some compassion in your heart." I sat in the chair across from her. I looked her straight in the eyes. "Sophia, the compassion you seek I spent over 8 months. I used it every time I sold something I loved to give you money. I used it every time I worked overtime until my feet bled. I used it when I sold the wedding band my husband gave me, the last piece of him I had left, to complete the payment you needed. And do you know what I received in exchange for all that compassion? A message of 5 words telling me you didn't need me anymore." "That message was my idea too," Sophia admitted, her voice barely a whisper. I told Ethan to write it. I thought if we cut communication with you for a while, you wouldn't have the chance to ask us to pay back the money. I thought we could simply drift away, enjoy the house, and eventually contact you again when we needed something else, maybe for our children's college in the future. The coldness of that confession left me speechless. They had planned to exploit me long term. It wasn't just about the house. It was about establishing a pattern where I was the family resource they could turn to whenever they wanted something they couldn't afford themselves. Does Ethan know you are here? No. He is at home, making desperate calls. He thinks I am at my parents' house begging them to sell something, to mortgage their house, anything. But I came here because I know he isn't going to beg. His pride won't let him. But I have no pride right now. I only have fear. Fear of what? Of losing the house? Of having to live in a more modest place like the rest of normal people? Fear that Ethan will blame me for all this? Fear that our marriage won't survive losing everything? Fear of having to admit to my family and friends that the perfect life I have been showing on social media was a lie built with someone else's money. There it was, the real truth. She didn't care about hurting me. She didn't care about the relationship between Ethan and me that she had helped destroy. She cared about her image, her marriage, her social status. Even in this moment of supposed honesty, she was still fundamentally selfish. Sophia, I am going to tell you something you need to hear. You and Ethan built your relationship on rotten foundations. You built your life on manipulation, greed, and exploitation. A house, no matter how big or beautiful it is, cannot sustain a marriage that has no real values. If your relationship with Ethan is destroyed because you lost material possessions, then it was never a real relationship to begin with. But we can change. I can change. If you give us one more chance, I promise we will be different. We will pay you every penny. We will include you in our lives. We will make you part of the family, as you should have been from the beginning. Promises? Sophia, your currency is empty promises. Ethan promised me the first loan would be returned in 2 months. He promised me every additional request would be the last. He promised me that when I had grandchildren, I would be a present grandmother in their lives. Every promise evaporated the moment you got what you wanted. Why should I believe this time would be different? Sophia stood up, walking toward where I was sitting. She knelt in front of me, taking my hands in hers. The gesture was dramatic, almost theatrical, because this time we lose everything. This time the consequences are real. This time we have nowhere else to turn. Please, Catherine, I beg you, help us one last time. I withdrew my hands from hers firmly but without violence. Sophia, get up. Get up and listen to me well, because this is the last thing I am going to say to you. I am not going to rescue you. I am not going to call the bank. I am not going to take out another loan. I am not going to sell anything else. I am not going to do absolutely anything to prevent you from losing that house. And do you know why? It isn't because I am cruel. It isn't because I don't love my son. It is because helping you now would be the most harmful act I could do. It would be telling you that no matter how you treat people, there will always be someone to save you from your own decisions. It would be teaching you that manipulation works, that exploitation has a reward, that there are no real consequences for abuse. Sophia stood up slowly. The tears had stopped falling. In their place, I saw something more familiar on her face: rage. The mask of the repentant woman was falling, revealing the true Sophia underneath. You are a bitter old woman who can't stand seeing her son happy. That is what you are. You are jealous that Ethan chose me over you. You are jealous of our youth, of our life, of our future. And now, because you can't have what we have, you want to destroy it. There she was, the real woman, the one who had always been there, hidden behind fake smiles when she needed something. If that is what you need to believe to sleep at night, go ahead. But the truth, Sophia, is that I don't envy you anything. I look at your life, and I see emptiness disguised as luxury. I see a relationship without real depth. I see two people who confuse possessions with happiness. And I feel pity. Not envy, pity. Ethan was right about you. He said you had become bitter since his father died. He said you were probably resentful of him for having a life when you no longer had anyone. Those words hurt more than I wanted to admit, not because they were true, but because they revealed how Ethan really saw me. To him, I was just a lonely and bitter widow, not a complete woman with her own life, her own feelings, her own dignity. It is time for you to go, Sophia. I am not leaving until you promise me you are going to help us. Then you are going to be here a long time, because that promise is never coming. Sophia looked at me with pure hatred. There were no more tears. There were no pleas, just distilled rage. You are going to pay for this. Somehow, you are going to pay. I already paid. Sophia, I paid with $180,000. I paid with my peace of mind. I paid with my most precious possessions. I paid with 8 months of my life dedicated to financing your fantasy. I already paid more than I owed. Now it is your turn to pay the consequences of your actions. Sophia walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned one last time. Ethan is never going to forgive you for this. You are never going to meet your grandchildren. You are going to die alone, wondering if your revenge was worth it. This isn't revenge, Sophia. Revenge would be active. It would be seeking to hurt. This is simply stopping being hurt. There is a difference, even if you can't see it. The door slammed shut behind her with a bang that made the walls shake. I heard her car starting, tires screeching as she drove away too fast down my quiet street. I stood in the middle of my living room, processing everything that had just happened. The confrontation I had feared, that I had imagined hundreds of times, had finally occurred, and I had come out of it without giving in, without breaking, without returning to old patterns. My phone rang. It was Jonathan. Catherine, just wanted to inform you. Ethan tried to contact the bank manager directly today. He offered his car as part of the payment, along with several of his belongings. They told him none of that adds up to enough to cover the debt. He has until tomorrow at noon, 12 hours beyond the original deadline, because the manager gave him a courtesy extension. Is an extension going to change anything? Not unless they get $120,000 in the next few hours, which is virtually impossible. The foreclosure process will begin tomorrow afternoon. The eviction notice will be sent, and they will have approximately 2 weeks to vacate the property. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, Ethan and Sophia would be packing their things, leaving behind the mansion they had believed was their right, facing the reality that actions have consequences. Thanks for keeping me informed, Jonathan. Catherine, how are you? Emotionally, I mean. It was a good question. How was I? Sad about the relationship with my son that would probably never recover. Relieved that the cycle of exploitation had finally ended. Scared of what my future meant without Ethan in it. But also, and this surprised me, I was at peace. I am fine, Jonathan. Better than I have been in a long time. The morning of the final day arrived with a strange stillness. I woke up early, before the sun rose, and lay in bed staring at the ceiling of my room. Somewhere in the city, 40 minutes away, Ethan and Sophia probably hadn't slept all night. They had probably spent the last hours making desperate calls, looking for miracles that wouldn't arrive, clinging to a hope that grew smaller with every passing minute. I got up and went through my morning routine with a calm that surprised me. I made coffee, made toast, sat by the kitchen window to watch the sunrise. The birds sang as if it were any other day. For them it was. For the world it was. Only for 3 people in this city did this day mark a before and after. At 9 in the morning, my phone started ringing. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Mrs. Miller. The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. Yes, this is she. My name is Alfred Clark. I am a friend of Ethan's. He asked me to contact you. He says you are not answering his calls. Of course, Ethan was now sending emissaries. People who didn't know the whole story, who had only heard his version of events, who would call me thinking I was the irrational mother abandoning her son in his time of need. Mr. Clark, I appreciate your concern for my son, but this is a private family matter. I am not going to discuss it with strangers. I understand, ma'am. But Ethan is desperate. He told me there is a misunderstanding with a loan, and that you are the only one who can resolve it. He is willing to sign any document you want, to set any payment terms, whatever is necessary. He just needs you to reactivate the pending payments. Did Ethan tell you how much money I have given him in the last 8 months? There was a pause. He told me you had helped with the down payment on the house. Did he tell you I sold everything I owned? Did he tell you I went into debt to the point of not being able to pay my own basic bills some months? Did he tell you that the day after completing the last transfer he texted me telling me they didn't need me anymore? Another pause, longer this time. No, ma'am, he didn't tell me that. Then you don't know the whole story, Mr. Clark, and I suggest you ask my son for the details before making more calls on his behalf. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Another unknown number. I didn't answer. It kept ringing for the next hour. Different numbers, different people, probably all friends or acquaintances of Ethan, whom he had recruited in his last-minute campaign to change my decision. At 10 in the morning, I received a message from Susan, William's wife, Catherine. Ethan called William again this morning. He is begging us to intervene. William told him no, that he must face the consequences of his actions. Ethan yelled at him and hung up. Just wanted you to know, we continue to support you. I replied with a simple thank you. I didn't trust my ability to write more without emotions overwhelming me. At noon, Jonathan called me. Catherine, the deadline just expired. Ethan and Sophia didn't get the money. The bank is formally initiating the foreclosure process. The notices will be sent this afternoon. They have 14 days to vacate the property. I understand. There is something else you should know. Since you are the person who paid the majority of the property and the loan was in your name, the bank is offering you the option to acquire the property for the remaining amount. Basically, you could pay the remaining $120,000 and the house would be legally yours. I stood in silence processing that information. I could have the house. I could become the owner of the Highland Park mansion that I had financed with my blood, sweat, and tears. I could kick Ethan and Sophia out and keep the property as compensation for everything they had done to me. But I didn't want that house. I had never wanted it. That house represented everything that was wrong in the relationship with my son. It represented greed, manipulation, distorted values. Living there would be like living in a monument to my own pain. I am not interested, Jonathan. Let the bank do what it has to do with the property. Understood. I must also inform you that there is a possibility you will recover part of the money you invested when the bank sells the property. As you are a primary creditor in this case, you have a right to a portion of the funds after the bank's debt is covered. That did interest me. Not out of greed, but out of survival. I needed that money to pay the debts I had accumulated. I needed to rebuild the savings I had destroyed. I needed financial stability again. Please handle it, Jonathan. I trust you. I will. And Catherine, for what it is worth, I think you have done the right thing. I know it hurts now, but in the long run, this was necessary. After hanging up with Jonathan, I went out to the garden. The rose bushes I had started caring for again showed signs of recovery. Some new buds were starting to appear among the branches I had pruned. Life was returning slowly, with patience, with constant care. I heard a car pulling up in front of my house. My heart raced. I looked toward the front and saw Ethan's car. This time he wasn't alone. Sophia was with him. I saw them get out of the vehicle, their movements tense, their faces haggard from lack of sleep and stress. I didn't go out to meet them. I stayed in the backyard, waiting. I heard the doorbell, then the knocking on the door, then Ethan's voice calling me. Mom, I know you are there. Your car is here. Please. We need to talk. It is urgent. I stayed still, my hands still in the garden soil, feeling the texture between my fingers. The knocking became more insistent. I heard Sophia too, her voice cracking. Catherine, please, we just want to talk. Give me a chance to apologize properly. After 10 minutes, I heard them walking around the house. They appeared in the backyard, seeing me kneeling by the rose bushes. Ethan looked terrible. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes. His clothes were wrinkled as if he had slept in them. His hair messy. Sophia didn't look any better. All her usual composure had disappeared. Mom. Ethan approached slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. Please, we have to talk about this. I stood up, shaking the dirt off my hands. I looked at both of them without saying anything. The bank notified us. Ethan continued, his voice trembling. We have 2 weeks to leave the house. Mom, this is real. We are going to lose everything. You aren't going to lose everything, Ethan. You are going to lose a house. A house you should never have had in the first place because you couldn't pay for it yourselves. How can you be so cold? I am your son, your only son, and you are my only mother, I replied, feeling my voice crack for the first time. I am the woman who gave you life, who raised you, who loved you unconditionally, who sacrificed everything for you for 69 years. And when I finally needed you to treat me with a minimum of respect and gratitude, you discarded me like trash. Ethan took a step back as if I had hit him physically. I didn't mean that. The message, I was frustrated. I was stressed. I didn't think you would take it so literally. Ethan, it wasn't just the message. It was 8 months of being treated like an ATM. It was the visits that never happened unless you needed money. It was the broken promises one after another. It was the lies about paying back the initial loan. It was the way Sophia treated me as if I were less than nothing. The message was just the straw that broke the camel's back, but the cup had been filling up for a long time. Sophia stepped forward, trying to take my hands. I pulled them back. Catherine, I already told Ethan everything I did. I confessed to him that I was the one who manipulated him to ask you for money constantly. I told him I was the one who devised the message to push you away. He is angry with me. He is hurt. But we can still fix this as a family. Fix it how? Exactly? By getting me to take out another loan I can't pay? By selling me something else I don't have? I have nothing left to give. Sophia, you emptied me completely. Ethan dropped to his knees on the grass. Mom, I beg you. I know I have been a bad son. I know I haven't treated you as you deserve. But give me a chance to make it up to you. If you help me this last time, I will spend the rest of my life paying you back for everything. Financially, emotionally, everything. Seeing him on his knees, crying, pleading, should have moved me. It should have activated all those maternal instincts to protect, to save, to sacrifice myself. But there was something different this time. I saw clearly that helping him now would be perpetuating the cycle. It would be teaching him that last-minute tears erase months of abuse. It would be confirming that he could treat me however he wanted because in the end, Mom would always give in. Ethan, get up. He looked at me from the ground, hope mixed with despair in his eyes. Get up and listen to me well. I am not going to help you save that house. I am not going to call the bank. I am not going to do anything to reverse what is already in motion. And I am going to tell you why. Ethan stood up slowly from the ground, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. Sophia remained by his side, motionless, waiting for my words like someone awaiting a sentence. I am going to tell you why I am not going to help you, son. It isn't because I don't love you. It isn't because I want to see you suffer. It is because helping you now would be the most destructive act I could commit against you. It would be stealing from you the only chance you have to become the man your father dreamed you would be. Mom, please no. Let me finish. Your father, God rest his soul, used to tell me something when you were little. He said his biggest fear wasn't that life would hit you, but that you would never learn to get up from those hits because we would always be there to prevent you from falling. And he was right. I have spent your entire life being your safety net, your life raft, your solution to every problem. And by doing that, I took something invaluable from you. I took away the opportunity to develop your own strength, your own resilience, your own capacity to face consequences. Ethan was shaking his head. Tears kept falling. This is different. Mom, this isn't a life lesson. This is losing our home. No, Ethan. This is exactly a life lesson. This is learning that you can't build a castle with other people's money and expect it to hold up. This is learning that people aren't disposable resources. This is learning that your actions have weight, have consequences, have a cost. And yes, that cost is going to hurt. It is going to hurt a lot. But that pain is the price of becoming someone better. Sophia finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. And if we don't survive this? And if this destroys us as a couple? Then your relationship never was strong enough to begin with. A real marriage, built on genuine love and shared values, can survive losing a house. It can survive economic adversity. It can survive having to start over. If your marriage can't withstand this, it is because it was built on foundations as fake as those of that mansion you are about to lose. You are cruel, said Sophia. You hide your cruelty behind pretty words about lessons and growth, but the truth is you are enjoying this. You are enjoying watching us suffer. I looked her straight in the eyes. If I were enjoying this, Sophia, my chest wouldn't hurt every time I breathe. I wouldn't have cried every night this week for the relationship with my son that will probably never recover. I wouldn't be standing here feeling my heart break in two while I watch Ethan beg. The fact that I am doing the right thing doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It means I love my son enough to allow him to face the consequences that will make him a better person, even if that means he hates me for the rest of his life. Ethan approached me, putting his hands on my shoulders. I could never hate you, Mom. You are my mother. I love you. Do you love me, Ethan? Or do you love what I can do for you? Because for the last 8 months, the only time I heard from you was when you needed money. The only time you visited me was when you had a new request. The I love yous always came accompanied by loan requests. So forgive me if I question whether you really know what it means to love someone, or if you only know how to use that word to manipulate. His hands fell from my shoulders. He stepped back as if I had burned him. That isn't fair. It isn't fair? Ethan, I sold the wedding band your father gave me. I sold the last physical piece connecting me to the love of my life. And do you know what you told me when I transferred that money to you? Received. Thanks. Not even thanks, Mom. Just thanks. As if you had bought a coffee for a stranger. So don't talk to me about what is fair. Silence fell over the garden. Only the singing of the birds and the distant sound of traffic on the main avenue could be heard. Ethan and Sophia looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between their eyes. Finally, Sophia spoke. So this is it. There is nothing we can say or do to change your decision. No, okay. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Then I guess we have nothing else to talk about. She took Ethan's hand and started guiding him toward the exit of the garden. Ethan resisted, turning to look at me one last time. Mom, if we do this, if we lose the house and start over, are you going to be there? Are you going to want to be part of our lives when you no longer have to give us money? The question pierced me like an arrow. It was the only thing that really mattered, right? Beyond the money, beyond the house, beyond all the drama and pain. The real question was, if we could still be family. Ethan, I am always going to be your mother. That is never going to change. But the relationship we have from now on has to be different. It has to be based on mutual respect, not financial transactions. It has to include real presence, not just calls when you need something. It has to be reciprocal, not one way. If you are willing to build that kind of relationship with me, then yes, I am going to be there. But I am not going to be your personal bank again. I am not going to sacrifice my stability for your comfort again. I am not going to allow myself to be treated as anything less than the mother I have always been. Ethan nodded slowly, processing my words. I understand, and it will probably take me a long time, maybe years, to forgive you for this and forgive myself for getting to this point. But you are right. I need to learn to solve my own problems. That is all I have wanted to hear for 8 months. Sophia pulled on Ethan's hand. Let's go. We heard enough. I watched them walk away through my garden, walking toward their car. Ethan turned one more time before getting in, raising his hand in a wave that seemed too final. They got in the car and left, leaving me alone in the garden with my thoughts and my recovering rose bushes. I stood there for a long time after they left. The sun was beginning to set on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. It had been months since I stopped to appreciate a sunset. I had been too busy, working, worrying, sacrificing. I went into the house and made myself a simple dinner. I ate slowly, without haste, savoring every bite. Afterward, I washed the dishes by hand, even though I had a dishwasher. There was something therapeutic in the process, in the hot water, in the repetitive movement. My phone rang. It was a message from Jonathan. Catherine, the bank confirmed that Ethan and Sophia received the official eviction notice. The process is complete. In approximately 3 months, once the property is sold by the bank, you will receive a check for the portion corresponding to you from the sale. According to my calculations, you should recover between $70,000 and $90,000. It is not everything you invested, but it is enough for you to pay your debts and rebuild your savings, $70,000 to $90,000. It wasn't the $180,000 I had spent, but it was more than I expected to recover. It was enough to start over. It was enough to have stability again. I replied, "Thanks for everything, Jonathan. I don't know what I would have done without your help. It is what friends do, Catherine. And your husband was my best friend. Taking care of you is the way I honor his memory." That night, for the first time in weeks, I sat on the front porch. My neighbors walked by, some with dogs, others simply enjoying the fresh evening air. Mrs. Antonia, my next-door neighbor, approached. "Catherine, so nice to see you out here. It has been months since I saw you sitting on the porch." "I have been busy, Antonia, but not anymore. I am glad. You look different, lighter, somehow." She was right. I felt lighter, as if I had been carrying an invisible weight for years and finally dropped it. The following days were strangely peaceful. There were no desperate calls from Ethan. There were no messages from Sophia. There was a silence that could have been uncomfortable, but instead felt like a necessary space. Space to heal, to process, to transform. I used that time to reconnect with friends I had neglected, to go back to the book club I had withdrawn from because I couldn't pay the monthly fee, to walk through the park that was near my house and that I had forgotten existed, to live my own life instead of living solely to finance my son's. 3 weeks after the final confrontation in my garden, I received a letter. It was from Ethan. Handwritten, in his handwriting that I would recognize anywhere. "Mom, we are living in a small apartment now. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, nothing compared to the mansion. But it is ours. Well, it is rented, but we are paying for it ourselves with our own salaries." Sophia had to sell most of her designer bags and expensive shoes. I sold my car and bought a used one. We are living on a strict budget for the first time in our lives. And you know what, Mom? It is terrifying. But it is also liberating in a strange way. I don't have to maintain appearances I can't afford. I don't have to impress anyone. I just have to be me. I am still angry with you. What happened still hurts. But I am also starting to understand why you did it. I don't know how long it will take me to forgive you completely, but I wanted you to know that I am trying to grow from this. I am trying to be the man Dad wanted me to be. With complicated love, Ethan. I read the letter 3 times. There was pain in those words, but there was also something else. There was the beginning of awareness, the first sprout of real maturity. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't an immediate reconciliation, but it was a start. I replied with my own letter. "Ethan, I am happy to know you are finding your way. Real pride doesn't come from the possessions you have, but from knowing you can support yourself. Your father would be proud of the steps you are taking. I am too. And when you are ready, when you are really ready to build a relationship based on mutual respect and not financial need, I will be here. I will always be your mother. That will never change. With unconditional love, but with necessary boundaries. Mom." 6 months later, I received the check from the bank, $85,000. I paid all my debts, every loan, every overdue bill, every penny I owed. What was left I put in a new savings account, one I promised never to touch unless it was for myself. With the money left after paying the debts, I hired someone to completely fix my garden. My husband's rose bushes were pruned professionally, the irrigation system was repaired, new flowers were planted. My little house became an oasis that was truly mine. 1 year after the day everything changed. I was working in the garden when I heard a car stop. I looked up and saw Ethan getting out. He came alone. He looked different, thinner, with some gray hair he didn't have before. But there was something in his eyes that was new. Humility, real maturity. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, son. Can I come in?" "You can always come in." We went into the house. I made tea for both of us. We sat in the living room where it all began, where I signed the first loan papers so long ago. "Mom, I have come to tell you something I should have said a long time ago. I am sorry. I am sorry for using you. I am sorry for disrespecting you. I am sorry for allowing Sophia to treat you poorly. I am sorry for sending you that terrible message. I am sorry for everything." Tears ran down his face. These were different from the tears of that day in the garden. Those had been tears of desperation. These were tears of true regret. And Sophia and I are in therapy. We are working on ourselves, on our marriage, on our values. It isn't going to be easy. We have a lot of damage to repair. But we are trying. And part of that is that she also wants to apologize to you. Not today. She isn't ready yet. But someday, I accept your apology, Ethan. And I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Not a single day. I know, Mom. And that is what makes all this harder. Knowing that you always loved me, even when I didn't deserve that love. We spent the afternoon talking. Really talking. Not just exchanging superficial words. He told me about his life, his job, his struggles, his small triumphs. I told him about my garden, my friends, my regained peace. When he left that afternoon, we hugged at the door. A real hug, not one of those quick, obligatory hugs. A hug that said maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. I closed the door and went back to my garden. The rose bushes were in full bloom, beautiful and strong. They had survived neglect. They had survived being pruned almost to the root. And now they bloomed more beautifully than ever. I knelt beside them, gently touching the petals. My husband would have been proud of these roses that refused to die. Proud of me for finally finding my strength. Proud of Ethan for starting to find his. Life wasn't perfect. The relationship with my son would never go back to what it was. There were scars that would never heal completely. But there was something new growing in its place. Something stronger, more honest, more real. And as the sun set over my garden, over my little house that had always been enough, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt that I had finally come home. Not to a mansion in Highland Park. Not to a symbol of status or material success, but to myself, to my own strength, to my own light that no one would ever put out again. And that, I discovered, was worth more than all the money in the world.